Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Lynn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good morning, and welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. I am Karl Cassell, President and CEO of Horizons, and today I'll be your moderator. And we're going to discuss a topic that is affecting millions of families across the country more and more today than ever before. In what seems to be the distant past, the most notable decision college students and their parents would make would be what school they should attend and what major they should apply to. Most recently, students and their parents are grappling with the threat of not pursuing higher education due to the rising cost of most schools today. What seems to be occurring more regularly is students being required to take larger sums of debt in order to pay for their future endeavors. Joining me today, we have, to my immediate left, Kathi Moss, Housing and Education Coordinator for Horizons, a Family Service Alliance. Good morning.
Good morning.
Next to her, we have Wendy Dunn, Executive Director of Planning from Coe College. Good morning.
Good morning.
And on the end here, we have Amer, Professor of Economics at Mount Mercy University. Good morning.
Good morning.
We are grateful for the insight that they're going to provide for us today. So let's start. Kathi, I'll ask you a question first. What are you seeing with the clients that you work with? Are there people who are finding themselves filing for bankruptcy or needing credit counseling because of any student loan debt or past education pursuits?
There's a significant number of people that I see on a regular basis that have student loan debt that has gotten a hold of them, and they're not quite sure how to work their way through it. Often they've gotten to the point of default, and so they're not receiving their taxes anymore, or they've suddenly gotten a notice from their bank that their bank account is going to be garnished, and they can't pay a house payment. They can't do stuff like they need to do with their family if their student loan has gone into default and the actions have been taken to get it collected.
Absolutely. For either one of you, are you seeing, and we'll just start with you, Wendy, please. Are you seeing a decline in enrollment at your school? Are you seeing students maybe? Are you seeing a decline first and foremost? Are students not willing to come to school because of this?
Actually, at Coe College in particular, we're seeing an increase in enrollment.
Okay.
But we're also seeing an increase in awareness of how much college education costs. And one of the things that we're concerned about is the difference between the perceived cost of college and the perceived price of college. And for most students nowadays, those are not the same thing. Most students have access to loans, they have access to federal financial aid. Institutions are providing individual financial aid, institution-specific financial aid, and that's a big part of what we do at Coe, is to try and evaluate each student's application based on their financial need, and we try and, as best we can, meet the gap so that they can afford to come to college.
Perfect. Anything? It's yours.
I think it is absolutely right that the cost is lower than the price, because there's a price tag. But in the end, you have government programs which are very necessary to keep the affordability of higher education as it is, and it should be, and it is and we are talking about this at a time in which state and federal agencies are trying to cut off some of the subsidy. So that is becoming very hard. Yeah. In addition to what you're saying, that this is an intensive technology industry that has infrastructure, that has to hire people with degrees. So it's an expensive industry, but it didn't change that much, I think, other than because of the recession. And of course, there is a more long-term problem of inequality. So that is part of the problem.
And we'll deal with that, some of the inequalities as well. But you guys all touch on a point that I want to, as we start talking about future employment and job pursuits. So even minimum wage jobs now are requiring college degrees. What does that do to those who are already in poverty? Will we see that trend continue with more in poverty because now they're taking on debt, or people staying out of school and continuing in poverty? And that's for anyone.
We're continuing to see more and more students going on to college. I haven't seen the beginning of the reversal of that trend. If you look at the percentage of high school students in Iowa or in the nation that are going on for four-year education, that percentage is continuing to increase. I don't see that slowing down. So as a phenomenon, I think that it is continuing. There is still a benefit average-wise to going to college. The average student who goes to college makes far more in a lifetime of work than the student who does not go to college. That is, of course, individual specific and occupation specific, but overall, college still is of benefit, and it's of economic benefit as well as, I believe, a personal benefit to individuals who experience the richness that a college education affords throughout life.
Absolutely.
Richness economically and richness spiritually and
I
personally.
can attest to that as well. I have some numbers when I was preparing myself today. It's about 17, the number is that is in the research, is about $17,000 annually. That's the premium of going to college versus not, say, high school degree. And over a lifetime, a career, it would be between $1 million, or the number is about $1 million or less, between $500,000 and $1 million over, say, 30 years of work. So it is absolutely true, and people tried in research to calculate that number.
Very good. Kathi, any
What I
thoughts?
see is, and this is just in my field, because I see folks that have that are wanting to go to school, and they're trying to find a way to work and go to school.
Certainly.
And that's a struggle sometimes for family life then.
Right.
But some of them, a lot of people are doing it that way too.
Well, and so let me kind of take us another direction. So students who are not your traditional students, so your non-traditional students, we're seeing an increase of people as we went through the 08 recession, and coming out of that, people that were downsized and former employers going back to school. Are we seeing an increase of non-traditional students?
At Coe College, we have very few non-traditional
Okay.
students, and so we're not seeing an increase, but Coe occupies a particular niche in the higher education climate. I suspect that there is an increase in other kinds of institutions.
Okay.
We have. I think I have seen the age, say the average age of a student. We have an accelerated program and we have a graduate program. And even in the traditional regular classes, I see that the age is a little bit higher. So people do go to work. They delay sometimes their social, say, marriage, or they go to work, or they have children, which is not, historically, it wasn't like that. It was a younger person who doesn't have children.
Right.
Now we see a little bit more of that.
What we are seeing at Coe College is a delay between graduating from college and going to graduate or professional school.
Okay.
20 years ago, most students who went to graduate school or professional school, like law school or medical school, would do their 4 years of undergraduate work, and they would immediately go into their 2 or 4 or 6 years of graduate study.
Yeah.
Increasingly today, students are laying out for a year, 2 years, 3 years, both, I think, to figure out what they really want to do and whether they really want to invest the additional time in further study, and also to collect some resources, financial resources in particular, to help them afford the additional burden of graduate education, which actually is responsible for a larger share of the debt, the college debt, than you might guess.
And in our accelerated or even graduate programs, a good percent of them is also supported by their employers, which is a great effort by the employers to encourage people to go back to school. So part of the picture which we should not forget is the responsibility of the corporation towards their employees to help them going back to school.
And so you have opportunities for employers to undergird some of those costs, but we mentioned earlier the loans that are taking out. So it's $30,000, sometimes $60,000 worth of debt for 20-something. Is that really prudent, considering regardless of the degrees that they're going to earn coming out, if they have advanced schooling even after that first degree, buying a house, a car, even starting a family, is starting off $30,000 to $60,000 in debt. Is that prudent? I'll start with you, Kathi, because some of the folks that you see probably have some of those thoughts or issues right now.
That's what I see are the folks that have said, I can't go on to the next phase of school because I've got a family, because I need to have a full-time job so I can keep the house payment current. But that's what I see. There's pros and cons with everything in the world, and
Very
you know,
true.
and I guess if your family and you're going to make it to what you can, you're going to do what you can do to make sure your family is comfortable and safe.
Yeah, certainly.
And if it means that you have to delay the going back to school, that's what they're doing. That's what I see.
Right.
But I'm not saying that. I mean, it's a choice.
It's a choice.
And student loans are out there. There's other opportunities for other financial aid through different medians, but you've got to know what you're looking for.
Right. And let me add, to answer that question, but add on something that you mentioned earlier about some of the, whether it's Pell Grants or some of the means, subsidies that are given to students. We're seeing a slight decrease over the last 10 years. It's showing Iowa is almost doing a -3% in terms of some state funds for students. So how do you address the shrinking amount of dollars available and the increased student loans?
That is the difficulty, and it is becoming, on an individual basis, for the individual, it's becoming less of a choice because of what you said, which is employer requires a college degree, or not high school is not enough anymore. That's on the individual, on the micro level. On the macro level, I don't think we as a nation can afford to let people, this is our edge. This is our global economic competitive edge, meaning that the best research, the best college education, the best graduate education has been here, and we should keep it as a point of strength for this nation. Otherwise, for the individual, it's becoming less of a choice. So it becomes then upon us as a society, which means upon the employer, upon the government, the state, the federal, the college, everybody, to be able to keep that. It's part of the American dream, I think. So,
Any thoughts, Wendy?
That's right.
I guess my thought would be that to answer a question like that in the aggregate is almost impossible because each person has his or her own set of values. Each person has his or her own plan for life. College fits in absolutely fundamentally for some people in a way that's quite different for other people. Some people are going to enter a high-income occupation where college is essential, and they will reap the benefit of that education 1, 2, 3 years out, irrespective of the amount of loan that they have. Students who go to medical school or to dental school may take out as much as $250,000 in loan. That loan will be repaid very quickly. For other people, the choice is quite different. Their loan may be $20,000 or $30,000, but they may enter a low-income occupation where the opportunity to pay back that loan is going to be limited by their lower earning power in that occupation. And so when we talk about global pictures about are loans too great, should individuals take out loans, is college too expensive, should we fundamentally change the funding of our college formulas and our cost formulas, So much of that is driven by, I think, an individual's particular circumstance, and it's hard to answer that on a national level. I do agree with you, however, that the government funding for education is diminishing. If you look at the state of Iowa, at the Regents institutions, the percentage of the cost of education borne by the state tax holders today is much less than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or 40 years ago when I graduated from college. For private colleges like Coe and like Mount Mercy, students, low-income students from the state of Iowa qualify for the Iowa Tuition Grant Program, much smaller percentage of the cost of education today than it would have been in earlier times. And so the state is backing out its support proportionate for the cost of education, and that is a social issue, I think, but it's a political issue and a social issue.
It's a political issue. Also in the sense that the labor market is demanding it.
Yes.
So people, like when you were saying, is it a choice? It's almost like not a choice anymore from the employer's point of view. So, you know, yes, it's not for everybody. There are other countries who did different models. For example, 2 years, 1 year after high school, that is apprenticeship or something of that, so that people can start their own businesses. So it is true that college is not, so, you know, the end for the route for everybody. But it seems like I said, it's our advantage in this country is that. So.
Well, I love the direction you guys are taking me, because now I want to start maybe a little earlier than college and talk about how do we prepare our students to compete in a global economy. So how do we prepare high school students, one, from an educational standpoint, to endure the rigors of college, even before we start talking about the cost, because they have to compete, as you've mentioned. Employers are almost forcing this competitive, and then we know with the global marketplace are enforcing that to be competitive in our world today, this is going to be needed. So what do we do to prepare students before college? How do we prepare educators? How do we prepare communities? As well as talk to our state legislators to say you can't keep cutting back the money available for students. I know that's a loaded question. Take it however you want it, but this is your time, your dialogue. I'd love to hear from you guys.
I think it becomes everybody's responsibility.
Absolutely.
It is not the university or the college only, or it is not the politicians only, or it is not the state or the federal government or the employer. All of us are part of this problem, and this is our children. And so we prepare them. We prepare them academically in the school K-12 level for critical thinking, communication, people skills. This is what I read that employers are looking for. College is much more than the specific subject of the study. It is learning skills of how to deal with people, how to communicate effectively in writing and in speaking and problem solving and critical thinking, and all of these ideas that sometimes you feel that it takes a little bit more attention at the school level.
I'd like to add that when I have families in, often they are wanting to help their children still, and their children have moved in with them, that adult children, sometimes with a family, and so that they can go back to school.
Oh, that's good.
So there's one of the pieces I see. There's also so many programs that are available to help with some of the costs. And one of the things that really needs to be emphasized at home and in school is financial literacy. Because so many students will go to school and it's just, I can get 4,000, I qualify for 4,000, I'm going to take it all because I might need it. I've got car payments to make, or I've got to buy an iPhone or something like this, which causes their own debt to continue to increase.
Right.
So part of that is, I think we were talking about it, is a cultural problem, meaning what? The idea that this new technology, say an iPhone or a computer or a gadget of some sort, we live in a culture that encourages people to buy beyond their abilities, and that is much bigger than college cost, a problem. It's a cultural idea, and that is not so in other countries that show off or something like that. But on the other hand, there is a simple idea here that I think I came up with when I was thinking about the subject. Why did the interest rate went up from about 3.5 to 4.5? If anything, this should be a 0% or 1% type of. This is an investment in human capital.
Yeah.
So why should it go up from 3.5 to 4.5? For example, that's a government authority to do, or on elected officials to do that. So that is a simple idea, isn't it? I mean, if the government is going to be part of this, then it's not that hard.
Yeah, be part of the solution.
Right.
Yeah. Any
Well, I'm thinking about how high schools could better prepare students for college, and I think that maybe, I've been teaching for a while, and I think that two things that I would see as good things to focus on are teaching students a sense of purpose and a sense of finishing what you start. Right. We live in a very immediate world. We think in short moments, everything from texting to short bits of communication. And I think if parents and schools could encourage students to persist a little longer and persist in the face of failure, perhaps, that would be a very good life lesson. And so I would love to see more emphasis on longer-term thinking, longer-term projects, more persistence on a task. I think that would help. And I echo what you said about critical thinking skills, communication skills, and I think group process skills too. Learning to collaborate effectively in a diverse global society is going to be a key, I think, for young people coming through the education system today. And so the opportunity to interact in groups of diverse people on diverse topics with respect and with purpose, I think would be a very powerful way of preparing for the college experience.
Absolutely. Well, we have about 5 minutes, but I want to touch on a topic because we keep coming back to the global significance of everything that's happening. And you talk about a more diverse perspective. So kids, whether they be from the inner city or low income, rural or urban, they're going to struggle a little bit in terms of getting to college and maybe even completing. How do we ensure for some of our lower income students the opportunity to succeed in the midst of this? But even for the kids that come from affluent backgrounds, they're going to need that access to people of varying backgrounds as well. How do we find that balance? And anyone can start.
I think they need to find the right product because student loans, there's about 12 different kinds of student loans that are available depending on what they're wanting to, if they have an idea, if they have any idea what they want to do in their future. Perkins loan, in fact, is they're few and they have to be initiated by the college, but they're almost all forgiven over a 5-year period, depending on what career that the student gets in. So there's one way to help, having the student understand which kind of a loan to get is important. Right. And I'm sure that the student aid people are doing everything they can, but student loans are there, and the easiest one to get is a federal loan. So.
And you are right. The students are too young, in some cases, to make these kinds of decisions.
Exactly.
So financial offices, services of that sort, to be aware of what you are getting into.
And perhaps as a word of advice, look below the surface. What you see on the surface of education is not necessarily what really exists. For example, we were mentioning the price and cost difference. The tuition price of a college is not what the school will cost. It's like buying a seat on an airline. Every seat costs different depending on when you buy it and who you buy it from and what your purpose of buying it is, and the same is true in college. And so if you just scratch the surface, you may decide that this college is not for me, this university education is out of reach for me, that occupation won't be worthwhile for me. And if you look deeper and you look farther, I think quite a different picture emerges. And so I think that if you were asking for advice, it is persist, look harder, look below the surface of what, and you might be surprised at the benefits that are there for you in pursuing the dreams that you have for yourself or for your children.
Certainly. One final topic. We look at people with disabilities or issues, our vets coming back from war, and the financial need, but even the supports that they're going to need while they're at school. Our Co-College, Mount Mercy, are we seeing those clients come into Horizons? Are those supports available at schools and in the community right now? And we'll just deal specifically with some of our returning veterans.
Yes, now Mount Mercy, I see it, and there is attention to the college offices that are, whose specialty is to deal with how to make sure that these students are receiving attention, if there is any different format of learning or teaching or testing, all of that is taken care of. I think to a great extent. I mean, they take, you know, they go further than, you know, you expect. So.
Good.
I agree. There's a lot of flexibility in the way that we provide our programs to different subpopulations of individuals. We work very, very hard at Co-College to try and meet the needs of each of the students that comes to us, whether those be medical needs, learning needs, emotional needs, family needs, financial needs. And I think that, again, persistence is the key. Look for what you need. Don't be afraid to admit what you need. And be flexible in thinking about how you can get what you need.
That's key.
Exactly. You've got to ask for what help that you're going to need.
Yeah, certainly. Well, we have just a minute of our time left, and I just wanted to first thank each of you for your time this morning. This was a wonderful discussion. We barely scratched the surface of it. We could talk for hours, but thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today on Ethical Perspectives on the News. We certainly, again, thank our guests for joining us and offering their perspective. We also hope that you as the population, the community, the society in which we live, would better understand, grow to understand this problem and what we can do to assist our families and our students who are entering higher education. As we understand, higher education is a means for some to attain, as you've heard today, the American dream, but those who are making those attempts are sometimes stifled by debt. They graduate with extreme debt, and then we as a society, as you heard today, need to figure out how, regardless of our position in life, how we can do to help these individuals. Good day to you. Thank you.